I'm going to come out here with the hardline stance that the banh mi is one of the greatest sandwiches in the world, and I'm not willing to entertain any disagreements. You got the crusty bread, the richly flavorful meat, the herbs, the crunchy pickled vegetables, the spicy jalapeños. It's an exceptionally well-balanced and layered eating experience where each ingredient complements the other. We're going to make ours with lemongrass pork, which you probably wouldn't consider particularly groundbreaking. And you'd be right, but this is pork that's been braised low and slow in rich coconut milk in the oven. Traditional? No. Delicious? You bet. But enough intro, let's make this one, shall we? Let's start with our pork. I'm using country-style ribs here, which you can find boneless or bone-in. The bones will further flavor your braising liquid, but these boneless ones that I found in the supermarket will work just fine. The country rib is a meaty cut situated right between the shoulder and the loin. You'll get the rich marbling you expect from the shoulder, along with the thick, lean meat of a pork chop. I like this cut that incorporates the best of both worlds, but you can't go wrong with spare ribs, back ribs, or anything from the blade or shoulder. Or the butt, which is actually a part of the shoulder as well. Anatomy can be interesting like that sometimes. We're drying our ribs off well, which is going to help them sear off nicely before they soak in their coconut milk bath. We're seasoning here with salt, Szechuan peppercorn, cumin, and coriander. As always, the amounts with the full recipe are in the video description below. Like we've demonstrated before, I'm toasting my spices over medium heat before grinding them, which will boost their flavor even further. Season the ribs liberally on all sides while your Dutch oven preheats. Once my peanut oil is hot enough, I'm searing my ribs first. Work in batches, ensuring you don't overcrowd the pot so that your meat can get some color. Remove so that we can use these bits of fond at the bottom of the pot to saute the rest of our aromatics. I'm using 2 chopped shallots, a few chunks of ginger, some smashed garlic cloves, and a few finely minced Thai chili peppers. Give the pot a little more oil if needed, and saute these together for a minute or two to let their flavors marry and infuse the oil and rendered pork fat. Before these aromatics burn, begin deglazing with some shrimp paste. Stir together for another minute and add your coconut milk to bring down the temperature of the pot. I couldn't find lime leaves, so I'm peeling a lime to add to our braising liquid, along with a bunch each of cilantro and Thai basil. You can pick off the leaves if desired, which will make your life a little easier as opposed to fishing out the stalks at the end like I did. I'm also adding some lemongrass here. So to prepare, cut off the ends, peel off the outermost layer or two, and cut the more tender stalk inside, roughly, into batons. I'm also throwing in the leftover seasoning I had from the pork. Douse your braising liquid with about a 1/4 cup of fish sauce before nestling your pork into its little coconut jacuzzi. Cover and throw it into a preheated 275-degree oven. That will need to cook for at least an hour before it's done, but like I do for most of my braises, I'll check it every 30 minutes. I need something to do to distract myself from the tantalizing aromas coming out of my oven though, so now is as good a time as any to prepare our pickled vegetables for the banh mi. I'm using a mixture of carrot and daikon radish, which, if I had any semblance of forethought, I would have had pickling in the fridge already. Thankfully, these pickles will come together quickly due to the amount of vinegar and how finely I cut my vegetables. But as much as I enjoy the meditative nature of knife prep, a julienne cut is time consuming, and I'm working against the clock to have these vegetables ready by the time my pork finishes cooking. So I'm going to use this julienne peeler, which will cut a bit smaller than what you'll find in a standard banh mi. I'm peeling a daikon radish along with this jumbo carrot, which may or may not give me minor feelings of inadequacy. But even if they make me self-conscious, these large vegetables will make it easier to work with the julienne peeler. Whether it's by hand or through the marvels of technological innovation as I'm using here, gather your vegetables together before preparing your pickling liquid. I'm using a cup of rice wine vinegar, along with another cup of water. I might as well use up the lime that I peeled as well, so juice that right into the mixture. I'm seasoning the brine here with 2 tablespoons each of salt and sugar. Throw in your vegetables, give it a shake, and pray that this cures in time. But before you go bothering whatever deity or cosmic force that you worship, realize that you forgot your cucumbers. So slice those up as thin as you can before squeezing them in with the rest of your pickled vegetables, which will inevitably make your brine runneth over. Continue checking your pork periodically, stirring your braising liquid and prodding the meat with a knife to check for doneness. The sugars in the coconut milk will caramelize during its time in the oven, darkening it and intensifying its flavor. It'll also reduce down, and by the time we're done, you'll have a thick, rich, unctuous sauce to coat the pork. Mine took 1 hour and 45 minutes, which is probably 15 minutes more than it should have gone. But I wanted really tender pork, and I'm not scared of those crusty bits that develop. Fish your meat out, along with the chunks of ginger, lemongrass stalks, and any stems from the herbs. Shred the pork, which shouldn't provide much resistance at all by this point. It would probably come apart with a spoon, or even just a stern talking to at this point. Dump your meat back into the pot, tossing to coat with that reduced sauce. Now, I'd be happy to just sit here and eat this with my fingers, but let's assemble it into our banh mi. The banh mi in New Orleans is almost just as popular as the po' boy, so I'm fortunate enough to be able to get these soft and crunchy Vietnamese baguettes freshly baked from the Asian market. Slice and warm before assembling the rest of your ingredients. I'll start with a generous helping of shredded pork. While your bread begins absorbing that sauce, layer on your pickled vegetables along with some sliced jalapeno and a few whole stems of cilantro. Slice in half because sandwiches just categorically taste better that way, and dig in. It's bites like these that remind me why the banh mi is one of my favorite sandwiches. From the start, it's a symphony of textures, from the crackly thin crust of the bread to the fluffy interior, to the crisp vegetables, to the soft and tender pork that just melts in your mouth. The flavors are incredible, especially from something that's a relatively simple mix of aromatics and spices. The coconut milk tempers the spice in the pork, to the point where the meat just has this subtle warmth. But the jalapeños bring the heat back in a very fresh tasting way, along with the pickled vegetables and the herbs that cut through the richness. I'm someone who loves pate in my banh mi, but the pork here is so rich and unctuous that you don't even need it. Any more fat here would just disrupt the balance of this sandwich, and that's what the banh mi is all about. Something tells me this would get approval from the OGs at my beloved Hong Kong market, though it doesn't look like they're the only ones. But that's how I know I've honored the Thai and Vietnamese culture showcased here, because this is something that I'm proud to serve up for you. Not too bad for a white boy, if I do say so myself. So hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more cultural fusion like this, served up right here at your favorite bodega.